All right, so JP, I was telling the boys, listen, there's no doubt that Chase Young, I think in almost everyone's mind, is going to be a guy that's going to come in here. He's having an impact right away, and I assume he's going to be a great player. But it's weird because, and I know I'm unusual here, and
He's too boring for you.
It's just kind of like I expect it. Now, I want something sexy to happen. And even though Chase is going to probably be a 4 or 5-time Pro Bowler and hopefully, be in contention for NFL Defensive Player of the Year or something, I'm looking for something sexy, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I think in a way he is sexy, but the lack of drama surrounding the number 2 pick is maybe what you mean more. Like,
yeah,
this has kind of been a done deal for months, and that is kind of boring going into draft night. But I think it's a good problem to have for the Redskins to be on the boring side of the fence, where we've seen so many fireworks for so long, and kind of nothing good has come of the fireworks side. I don't think there's going to be a trade. I don't think anybody's going to offer close to what they'd want to get off of it. And I think Chase is going to make their defense immediately better. He's a day one starter for you. Tua would be the sexy pick, and you would create all sorts of controversy and certainly plenty of topics for us for the whole summer. But I just don't think it's just not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen.
JP, do you have any inside skinny on the Falcons, who are in the middle of the first round with the 16th pick, trying to move up and get that number 2 pick from the Skins? I'm just guessing they didn't have enough ammunition to move up that far.
Yeah, I wrote a story about that this morning for the website. I mean, if you just think about it, Ron Rivera went on record publicly and said, listen, I'm not about trading back just to get more picks. I have to get equal value. To me, that meant that the Skins would never go further back than 5, because I think the only other player in their mind that would be equal value is Jeff Okudah, the corner from Ohio State. You're not going to get anybody like Chase Young at 16. Certainly good players are had at 16, and there's been, Hall of Famers, but you got to get the bell curve starts flattening out quick once you get outside of that top 5. And that, I think, is the problem. I mean, the Falcons can offer a lot, but you're still not offering the chance to get somebody with that elite potential.
JP, give us an idea of how it's going to work again. I know we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but in years past, Bruce was the final say, right? So those guys could kick things around. Maybe in Jay's first year he had a little more power. Then, his power started to wane sort of during his tenure here. That's at least the perception. Bruce had the final call, unless it was a first-round pick where Dan would like to get involved, right, occasionally. I assume it's kind of the same thing. Dan's going to be involved in the first-round pick a little bit, right? But that Ron will have that next voice underneath Dan. Is that your interpretation of how this room is going to work throughout the draft?
Yeah, I think for tonight there's really nothing to debate. I think everybody's on board with Chase, and they kind of just move on. I think as you get further into the draft, once you get to 66, and then especially once you get into the 4th round where they have 2 picks, and even kind of the wheeling and dealing stage where trying to trade Trent Williams is a huge part of this. I think Kyle Smith and that side of the building are really running that. I think Kyle Smith this is his draft, and I think he'll have even more influence than he has the past few years when Bruce did get involved. I think Ron is willing to let Kyle drive this thing, and then if there needs to be a tiebreaker, I think it'll be Ron, and if something gets to a level where they have to bring Dan in, they will, but I don't think Dan's getting involved in 3rd and 4th round picks. Now, they don't have a 2nd round pick. Maybe Dan needs to approve final compensation on a Trent trade. I don't know. But I think this is really going to be Kyle's operation. And think about this, too. Ron's been pretty clear that Kyle's not quite the GM, but he's basically acting in that role. He's really liked his last 3 drafts when he was director of college scouting. The most pressure in this situation is kind of on Kyle Smith, because if he nails this, then that really sets him up to whether or not they give him the GM title, that this is his gig for a while. And I think it'll be his show.
Talking to JP Finlay, Redskins insider for NBC Sports Washington. So if they draft Chase Young, that means Dwayne Haskins should be the starter. Obviously, you have the Kyle Allen quarterback in the equation. You talked to Urban Meyer this week about Haskins. What did he tell you?
He spoke highly of him. Everybody knows that Dwayne has all the arm talent. He's big. He's strong. To me, I think his his ceiling is to get to like a Ben Roethlisberger type player. That's what you'd hope he develops into. But Urban said two things that kind of stood out beyond just complimenting his guy, that he needs a lot of talent around him. I think like a lot of good quarterbacks need a really good team around them to flourish. There's not that many Russ Wilsons and Patrick Mahomes out there. And then the other thing that stood out, because it came out completely unprompted, was he called him out for his social media usage and just said he needs to not be on there so much. And it's something I've talked to him about, and it'll continue to, I think he was kind of saying that Ron might feel the same way. We'll have to see how that all shakes out.
JP, let's just take Trent out of this. And in the third round, the Skins select at 66. So if they don't trade up to the second round or trade back, what position do you think they target there in the third round? Is it receiver? Is it DB? Is it lineman? What do you think their second big position of need is?
So I think it's two separate questions, kind of. I think the second biggest position of need, the two biggest positions of need are going to be left tackle and tight end. I don't know that they're going to address either of those at 66. If you look at how they've run this offseason, this is clearly part of a long-term rebuild, and Ron feels confident that he has the time and the authority to build this how he wants. So I think they're going to go best player available. I won't be surprised at all if it's a cornerback at number 66, just because we've talked about the depth at wideout in this draft, but there's a lot of good corners too, and they just locked up Fuller, but then you've got Fabian Moreau and Ronald Darby are in one-year deals, or the last year of their deal. There's not a lot of depth at the corner position. I think when this team when Ron Rivera, Jack Del Rio took over the Redskins' job, I think they looked at the secondary as a place that needed to be overhauled and had some talent added in. So I won't be surprised if that's the pick. But if there's – I sincerely think if there's a really good player there, if there's a really good inside linebacker there, or certainly a tight end or a wideout that they want, I think they'll take him without hesitation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think that they got to get receivers. You just talked about putting some talent around Haskins. They've got to get – I think they've got to draft at least one, if not two, in this. Like if Michael Pittman slips to that 66, sure, I would jump all over it. I just think they need more talent on the outside. That's just my opinion. I know they need a tight end, but you're right. It's way too high to take them in the third round. But receivers,
they need playmakers.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, they need speed and guys that can make people miss, and they just don't have that. McLaurin obviously looks like a stud, and I think Steven Sims, who I think EB's guy, right? He really showed a lot down the stretch, and I think as he becomes more maybe a kind of a polished route runner, maybe he can do more in the slot beyond kind of gadget stuff. But you saw when they went for Amari Cooper, they know they need more playmakers. I mean, they had, depending on what you believe, $110, $150 million on the table. They know they have a hole there, but I don't think they're just going to recklessly attack it. I think they're going to try to identify their guys.
JP, do you think it's going to be a scenario where Terry McLaurin and the other Ohio State guys get into people's ears about KJ Hill, like bringing him in the mix, kind of another under-the-radar Ohio State guy, kind of in the mold of a McLaurin? Do you see that happening at some point?
Maybe. I talked to KJ at the Combine, and he was really into the idea. I think he and Dwayne Haskins are close. I don't know this, but where Dwayne could text, could try to speak up about these guys last year. I don't know that Terry or Dwayne are going to be calling Ron and saying, "Hey, take my boy, he's a Buckeye." But they're probably drafting Chase Young already, so maybe there'll be some momentum towards that. KJ Hill can play too.
Mm-hmm.
Where does Harmon fit in the equation? Because I wasn't huge on him going in, but he's kind of showed me something down the stretch a little bit. I feel like he's got a spot there.
I think he's got a roster spot for sure. And I think, if you look at his catches, I bet the bulk of them came once Haskins started at quarterback and they kind of started going younger. I think the question with Harmon is speed. And when you're talking about playmakers, Harmon doesn't really have top-line NFL speed. I think that's why he fell in the draft. There's not questions about his toughness or his hands or anything. He's not a burner. And if you want somebody on the outside in the NFL, typically
do you
want
need
somebody.
two? Do you need two burners?
I don't know that he might be bottom half of the league as far as outside wide receiver speed. So you don't have to be a burner, but you want to present some sort of deep threat or not allow safeties to overload to McLaurin's side. I don't know enough. We'll see with Harmon. I think he's a big kid. He's a tough guy. I certainly think he's on this roster, but if they loved Kelvin Harmon, they wouldn't have had the huge offer out for Amari Cooper.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Real quick, we touched on it earlier. If they go ahead and select Chase, JP threw out there, how do you see that rotation playing out if you had to guess? There's a lot of depth there.
Yeah, I think he'd be their best player day one. So I think you get him on the field day one. And I personally think Kerrigan could have a really resurgent year playing in a 4-3 defense where he's not asked to cover all the time and with a competent to very good defensive coordinator. And maybe he can just be kind of a pass rush specialist a little bit more than he's been allowed over the past few years. I think you put Chase Young on the field as much as you can, and that's first, second, third down. He can help you against the run. You're drafting a guy number 2 overall. You can't be worried about.
No, he's going to play. I agree with
Yeah.
JP, and we're going to go to break here in 30 seconds, but he's going to play right away. The other the question is, I mean, they just drafted Montez Sweat. I mean, we're expecting big things from him. So just how does that rotation work? That's kind of what we're wondering.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know right now. They'll have to sort that out, and then you hope all those guys stay healthy and you have a rotation. But they're going to have 5 first-round picks on that D-line between Allen, Payne, Sweat, Kerrigan, and this is a team that can't stop the run. You hope it turns around this year.
Right.
And then Ioannidis, who might be their best, not a first-rounder, but he's really productive.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and he's the only one that's gotten a contract out of those young guys. You know, I mean, he got the extension last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, JP. It's
All right,
awesome.
JP.
I know it's a big day for you, buddy. Have fun.
Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, bro.
All right.
JP.